You know exactly what you want for lunch today. You probably know what you want to accomplish by the end of the week, or even what you're hoping to do for your next vacation.
Right, those short-term plans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if someone stopped you on the street right now and asked, what is your grand goal in living? What would you even say?
I mean, that is the kind of question that triggers a profound existential pause. Because most of us are incredibly adept at navigating the micro desires of our day-to-day existence.
Yeah, the daily grind.
Right. But a single overarching grand goal that usually just earns a blank stare. We're so busy living that we rarely stop to consider what we are actually living for.
And that blank stare is, well, it's the first red flag. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are exploring a deeply practical, surprisingly joyful psychological toolkit developed by the ancient Roman Stoics.
Based on William B. Irvine's incredible source material.
Yes, exactly. And our mission today is to completely shatter the misconception that Stoicism is about being this grim, emotionless robot. We're doing this because without a grand goal, you risk the ultimate human tragedy, which is misliving.
Misliving, yeah. It's a terrifying concept, honestly.
It is. You risk lying on your deathbed, looking back and realizing you squandered your one chance at existence on, like, meaningless baubles.
Because we constantly fill our lives with pleasant distractions precisely so we don't have to face that exact void. But avoiding the void isn't a strategy. To avoid the tragedy of a misspent life, you need a coherent philosophy of life.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you want to avoid wasting your money, you hire a certified financial planner, right?
Right, you're a professional.
They look at your income, they tell you how much to save, they give you a strategy. But if you want to avoid wasting your life, who do you hire?
And the ancient Greeks and Romans actually had an infrastructure for this. You hired a philosopher.
Which just sounds so strange to modern ears.
It really does. It's a stark contrast to how philosophy is treated today. Modern philosophy is, well, it's largely an academic pursuit. It's logic puzzles, linguistic analysis, theoretical debates confined to university classrooms.
Yeah, very abstract stuff.
Exactly. But ancient philosophy, especially for Roman Stoics like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, was intensely practical. The entire reason you studied it was to attain a very specific grand goal, which they called tranquility.
I want to stop right there and clarify what they mean by tranquility, because I think a modern listener hears that and immediately pictures, popping a pill, zoning out on a beach, and just ignoring the world.
Yeah, just completely checking out. But it is the exact opposite of a medicated zombie-like state. Stoic tranquility is highly active.
Okay.
It is the deliberate absence of negative emotions like chronic anger, paralyzing anxiety, bitter envy paired with the active presence of deep, authentic joy.
Oh, wow. So it's not feeling nothing, it's feeling the right things.
Precisely. These thinkers were, they were some of the most insightful cognitive psychologists of the ancient world. They understood fundamentally that you cannot experience a good life if your internal landscape is a chaotic battlefield of uncontrolled emotional reactions.
Which brings us to the first massive hurdle we face. To get to that state of tranquility, we first have to examine our wildly broken desires.
They are definitely broken.
Right. Like, why are we so rarely satisfied with what we already possess? You strive for years to get the thing you want, you finally get it, and, a week later, it's just the new normal.
So evolutionary biologists and modern psychologists point to a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. Think of it as a satisfaction treadmill.
The treadmill, okay.
Yeah, from an evolutionary standpoint, adaptability is a superpower. If our ancestors found a bush full of berries, they couldn't just sit there feeling perfectly satisfied forever.
Right, they'd starve eventually.
Exactly. They needed their baseline of desire to reset so they'd be motivated to go find the next bush or build a better shelter. That restless dissatisfaction kept us alive.
But in the modern world, where survival is largely secured, that exact same mechanism is a complete disaster for our happiness.
It really is.
It's like when your eyes adjust to a dark room. At first, it's pitch black, but after a few minutes, that darkness just becomes your baseline reality. Think about lottery winners.
Oh, that's the classic example.
You hit the jackpot, and there is this undeniable, massive spike in exhilaration. You buy the mansion, you buy the Ferrari, but give it 12 months. That mansion just becomes the building I wake up in.
And the Ferrari is just the machine I use to get groceries.
Exactly. Your brain adjusts to the new environment, and your overall happiness drops right back down to wherever it was before you even bought the ticket.
And we run this exact script with our Spouses, our careers, our homes. We spend 4 years in college grinding for a specific career, land the dream job, and, 6 months later, we're agonizing over the commute.
Or the quality of the coffee in the break room.
Yes, we are constantly running on this treadmill, burning immense energy, but never actually arriving at contentment.
So if this treadmill is hardwired into our biology, how do we hack it? Because the Stoics introduced a practice that I think is, well, it might be the most powerful cognitive tool in their entire system.
You're talking about negative visualization.
Yeah. The premise is brilliantly simple. To maintain your desire for the things you already have, you must actively imagine losing them.
What's fascinating here is how incredibly jarring that sounds to the modern ear, because the dominant cultural narrative today is, manifesting in positive vibes only.
Just visualize success.
Right. But the Stoic philosopher Epictetus offered a practice that sounds incredibly harsh at first. He advised that when you're kissing your child goodnight, you should silently reflect on their mortality. You should actively remind yourself that they might not wake up tomorrow.
I have to admit, the first time I encountered that concept in the source text, it sounded like a recipe for a panic attack.
It really does sound morbid.
Like, why on earth would I invite that kind of terror into a quiet, beautiful moment with my kid?
Because there is a profound psychological distinction between worrying about a loss and contemplating a loss.
Okay, how so?
Well, worrying is a state of chronic fear. Your amygdala is firing, you're flooding your body with cortisol, and you're essentially living out the tragedy as if it is happening right now.
That makes sense. It's exhausting.
It is. But negative visualization, on the other hand, is a brief, deliberate intellectual exercise. It's like a cognitive circuit breaker. You do it for a few seconds, completely insulated from panic, simply to recognize the impermanence of the moment.
It's exactly like saying grace before a meal.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
When you sit down on a random Tuesday and express gratitude before eating, you are implicitly acknowledging that you could have gone hungry.
Right.
By briefly visualizing the lack of food, an ordinary, perhaps even boring dinner is instantly elevated into a celebration of abundance. You are manually hitting the override switch on hedonic adaptation.
And James Stockdale is the ultimate modern proof of this concept.
The pilot, right?
Yes, he was a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 7 years, enduring unimaginable torture, and he survived by leaning heavily on these exact Stoic principles.
Wow. 7 years.
Yeah. And if your baseline involves visualizing the loss of your freedom, your bodily autonomy, or your actual life, then the simple act of waking up in a warm bed with a glass of clean water becomes a miraculous event.
It flips the script entirely.
Completely. This seemingly morbid practice of contemplating loss actually transforms a practicing Stoic into a profound optimist. You stop clinging to the people and things you love, recognizing they're essentially on loan from fortune.
On loan. I like that.
And that allows you to maximize your joy in their presence right now.
Okay, so negative visualization is the hack for appreciating the present. It fixes our relationship with what we already possess. But, I'm ambitious, and I assume you are too. We want to build things. We want promotions. We want to achieve. So how does a Stoic strive for future goals without handing their peace of mind over to a world they just can't control?
Well, Epictetus designed a brilliant framework for exactly this tension. He famously stated that some things are up to us and some are not up to us.
Right.
But realistically, life isn't a strict binary. It's far more useful to view this as a trichotomy of control. So imagine your life divided into 3 buckets.
Okay, let me guess.
Yeah.
Bucket 1 is things we have absolute total control over, which honestly, when you think about it, is a very small list.
Very small.
And basically, our core values, our character, and the effort we put into our goals.
Yeah.
That's it. And then bucket 2 is the opposite, things we have absolutely zero control over.
Like the sun rising.
Right, the sun rising, macroeconomic shifts, or the fact that it's raining on your wedding day.
Exactly. And then there is bucket 3, which is the danger zone. This is where we spend, 90% of our waking lives.
The messy middle.
The messy middle. These are things we have some control over, but not complete control. A classic example is a tennis match. You control your training regime, your diet, the focus you bring to the court.
Right, all the prep.
But you do not control if a sudden gust of wind catches the ball, or if your opponent simply trained harder and plays better.
The Stoic strategy for surviving this third bucket is what they call internalizing your goals. Take an aspiring novelist. If her stated goal is, I want to get published by a major house and hit the bestseller list, she has placed her core objective squarely in bucket 3.
And that is incredibly dangerous for her tranquility.
It really is. She has handed the keys to her emotional well-being over to literary agents, fickle public tastes, and, let's be honest, pure luck. When the rejection letters come, she is going to be emotionally decimated.
But if she applies the Stoic framework, she internalizes that goal. She shifts the victory condition entirely into bucket 1.
Okay.
Her new goal becomes, I am going to write the best manuscript I am genuinely capable of, and I will submit it to 20 agents this year.
See, here's where it gets really interesting, though, because my immediate reaction is that this is just semantic wordplay.
How so?
I mean, it's a psychological trick. Deep down, that novelist still desperately wants the book deal. You can't just flip a switch and pretend the external validation doesn't matter at all.
Oh, it absolutely is a psychological trick. The Stoics were pragmatists. They were perfectly willing to use cognitive hacks to protect their tranquility.
So they admit it's a trick.
Yes, yes, she prefers to be published. But by consciously and rigorously moving the goalposts of success to her internal effort, she essentially bypasses the amygdala's fear response.
Right, the biological reaction.
Because the human brain perceives social rejection, like a publisher saying, your book is terrible, as a literal physical threat. By internalizing the goal, she neutralizes that threat.
Because if she gets the rejection letter, she technically hasn't failed. Her goal is just to write well and hit send. She succeeded the moment the email went out.
And the profound irony here is that letting go of the external outcome actually makes her more likely to get published eventually.
Because she keeps going.
Exactly. She doesn't spend 6 months paralyzed by imposter syndrome after a rejection. She just starts writing the next chapter. She becomes psychologically invincible.
I love that. Internalizing the goal protects us while we're striving for the future. But what happens when reality just drops a piano on your head? I can't internalize a flat tire on the highway in the freezing rain.
No, you can't. That requires a shift to Stoic fatalism. But we have to define this carefully because the modern definition of fatalism is someone throwing their hands up, sinking into the couch, and saying, nothing matters, so why try?
Yeah, nihilism, basically.
Right. That is fatalism about the future, and the Stoics violently rejected it. I mean, these were Roman senators, emperors, prolific writers. They were highly engaged people.
So their fatalism was strictly quarantined to the past and the present moment.
Exactly. Think about the cognitive load of regret. If only I hadn't taken this job, or if only I had left 10 minutes earlier, I wouldn't be stuck in this traffic jam.
We do that all the time.
We do. But the past is sealed. It is entirely impervious to your anxiety. Agonizing over it is the ultimate sunk cost fallacy.
It's just wasted energy.
And the exact same logic applies to the present moment, meaning the literal second you are currently experiencing. You cannot change what is happening to you right now.
Right, it's already here.
You can take action to change the next minute, but this current second is already reality. Fighting it is like screaming at the rain. You simply have to accept it.
And to build the emotional muscle for that kind of radical acceptance, they practice something called voluntary discomfort. The philosopher Musonius Rufus and Seneca were notorious for this.
Oh, they took it to extremes sometimes.
They really did. They would intentionally underdress for the biting cold. They'd sleep on hard wooden floors instead of their comfortable beds, or they would stare down a delicious meal or a glass of wine when they were hungry and consciously refuse to consume it.
And I know exactly what you're going to say about this.
I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking this sounds like pointless self-flagellation. I mean, we spend our entire lives and most of our paychecks trying to build a fortress of comfort.
We really do.
We buy memory foam mattresses, we have climate-controlled cars, we get food delivered directly to our doors. Why would I intentionally introduce suffering into my life if the ultimate goal is joy?
It sounds absurd until you look at the mechanism of how it works. Fasting, or choosing to be cold, acts as a form of stress inoculation.
Okay, like a vaccine.
Precisely. If you spend your entire life inside a perfectly engineered bubble of 72-degree comfort, the slightest deviation, a broken air conditioner, a delayed flight, feels like a catastrophic crisis.
Because you're so soft.
Right. Your threshold for suffering is 0. You become deeply fragile. By routinely exposing yourself to microdoses of hardship, you build a robust emotional immune system.
So if you know you can sleep on the floor for 3 days and wake up perfectly fine, the underlying dread of losing your wealth or your comfortable bed just kind of evaporates. You've already test-driven the worst-case scenario and survived.
It completely cures your anxiety about the future. And, it circles right back to the hedonic treadmill we talked about.
How so?
If you fast for 24 hours, you literally reset your brain's dopamine receptors. A simple bowl of plain rice suddenly tastes like a masterpiece from a Michelin-starred chef.
Oh, that makes sense.
Voluntary discomfort is the mechanism that renews your appreciation for the comforts you normally ignore. Plus, there is a very quiet, profound psychological reward in simply proving to yourself that you are not a slave to your own impulses.
Walking away from the indulgence proves you're in command of the vessel.
Exactly.
Okay, managing my own desires, my own comfort, my own goals, I can wrap my head around that. But the ultimate test of a philosopher's tranquility isn't sitting quietly alone in a room. It's navigating the most unpredictable, frustrating variable in existence, which is other people.
Other people. Yes. And the Stoics had zero intention of running away to live as hermits in the woods. They viewed humans as fundamentally social animals.
Hmm.
Their favorite analogy was the beehive. A bee cannot exist in isolation. Its entire biological purpose is to serve the hive. We have a profound, unshakable duty to participate in society and help each other.
But, and I think this is the crucial part, they weren't naive about it. They knew human beings could be absolute nightmares.
Oh, definitely.
Take Marcus Aurelius. He was the emperor of Rome. In his private journals, he wrote extensively about having to deal with people who were arrogant, backstabbing, ungrateful, and incompetent.
He really vented in those journals.
He had moments where he looked at humanity as essentially this tragicomedy of eating, sleeping, and excreting. He found people deeply irritating.
And you have to remember, he was the most powerful man on earth. He could have retreated to a private island and never spoken to a commoner again.
He had the resources.
He did. Yet he spent his life at the borders dealing with plagues, wars, insolent politicians, because doing his duty to the human hive was its own intrinsic reward. He genuinely believed that the universe designed us to work together, like the upper and lower rows of teeth.
So if you are forced to work with the lower row of teeth, and they happen to be awful, how do you preserve your tranquility? The Stoics developed highly specific sting elimination strategies for dealing with insults, which is usually the primary source of social friction.
Right.
Strategy 1 is brilliantly analytical. Pause and ask, is the insult actually true?
Right. Let's say someone mocks you for being bald or for lacking a specific skill and it happens to be a factual reality. Why let your heart rate spike over a self-evident truth?
Yeah, it's just a fact.
They are merely stating a fact about the universe. It only becomes an insult if you choose to attach shame to that truth.
That's powerful. Strategy 2 involves evaluating the source of the critique. If the person insulting you is someone you deeply respect, say a mentor or a master in your field, you shouldn't be angry. You should be taking notes.
Their critique is incredibly valuable.
But what if the person lobbing the insult is someone whose values you completely despise, someone you think is a terrible human being?
This requires a wonderful mental pivot. If person you consider foolish or corrupt disapproves of your actions, that is cause for celebration.
A celebration.
Yes. If they agreed with you, you'd need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Their insult is the ultimate confirmation that you are actually on the right path.
I love that reframe. And strategy 3 is my favorite because it completely short-circuits the power dynamic of an insult. Respond with self-deprecating humor.
It works so well.
When you get insulted, it's fundamentally a status play. The insulter is trying to pull you down and assert dominance.
And Cato the Younger provided a legendary masterclass in this. He was pleading a legal case when his political opponent literally spit in his face in front of everyone.
Wow.
The natural reaction is rage, a physical altercation. Cato simply wiped the spit off his face and calmly joked to the crowd, "I will swear to anyone that people are wrong to say you cannot use your mouth."
That is incredible restraint.
Or, take Socrates. A man walked up and violently boxed him in the ears. Socrates just rubbed his head and quipped about how frustrating it is that you never know when you need to wear a helmet for a simple walk.
The psychology there is lethal. By making a joke, Cato and Socrates are signaling to the attacker, I do not respect you enough to let your actions affect my internal state.
Exactly.
It completely deflates the attack. The insult simply fails to land. And if you aren't quick-witted enough to deploy a joke in the moment, they offer the ultimate fallback, which is absolute silence.
Which is tied to the barking dog analogy. If you're walking through your neighborhood and a dog barks aggressively at you from behind a fence, you don't go home and agonize over it.
Right.
You don't sit on your couch wondering, why doesn't that dog like me? What did I do wrong? You completely dismiss it because it's a dog. Barking is in its nature.
So what does this all mean? When a boorish, toxic person acts boorishly toward you, why act surprised? Expecting a deeply flawed person to be perfectly polite is like expecting a fig tree not to produce juice.
That's a great way to put it.
When you refuse to respond, you starve them of the one thing they were seeking, the twisted dopamine hit of seeing you lose your temper.
You deny them the power to control your mind. So we've outlined a massive cognitive toolkit here. Negative visualization to appreciate the present, internalizing goals to protect your future, fatalism to accept the past, voluntary discomfort to build resilience, and humor to neutralize social toxicity.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. So how does a modern person actually integrate this without getting completely overwhelmed?
Well, Seneca had a very specific protocol for this, which he called the bedtime meditation. At the end of the day, when the house was finally quiet, he wouldn't just go to sleep. He would conduct a psychological audit.
Right, a review of his day.
He would review his actions from a place of gentle, objective detachment. He would ask, why did I let my blood pressure spike over the seating arrangements at dinner? Does it actually matter? Or, why was I so defensive when my colleague offered feedback?
And he wasn't doing this to shame himself. He was treating his mind like a scientist observing an experiment. And that is the most vital takeaway for you as you listen to this. The goal of Stoicism is not to instantly transform into a flawless, godlike sage who never feels a twinge of annoyance.
That's impossible anyway.
Right. The goal is simply to track your progress. You'll know it's working when you notice your negative emotions don't last as long, that anger spikes, but it dissipates in minutes rather than ruining your whole week.
You recover faster.
Exactly. And in that newly cleared emotional space, you start experiencing these spontaneous, overwhelming bursts of joy just for the privilege of being alive.
And this brings us to a really provocative thought to leave you with, because it directly challenges the water we swim in today. Modern psychology and pop culture have built this massive consensus that to be emotionally healthy, you must constantly vent your feelings.
Yes, the constant venting.
We are told to let it all out, complain about every microaggression, process every slight out loud, and demand external validation when we feel wronged.
It's the dominant paradigm today. Express everything, or you're repressing it and you're going to get sick.
But the Stoic framework forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. What if this modern obsession with venting is actually the very thing making us miserable?
Wow.
What if constantly rehearsing our grievances is just training our brains to be hypersensitive and fragile? What if the ancients were right, and the true path to emotional resilience isn't endlessly expressing every negative emotion, but using logic and reason to quietly starve those emotions out of existence?
I mean, it's a radical shift in perspective. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to force the external world to perfectly align with your desires, which is statistically impossible anyway, you use these tools to engineer your desires to align with reality.
It changes everything. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take these ancient blueprints for tranquility and put them to the test in your actual life this week. Try the negative visualization. Try internalizing a goal. Remember the analogy from the start. You wouldn't let years go by without checking in on your financial plan to make sure you aren't wasting your savings.
So don't let your life go by without a philosophy to ensure you aren't wasting your days.
Exactly. Have a great one.